Holy crap, it's raining, and I gotta get my 10,000 steps. Hey, what's up, Moxie crew? It's raining out here, or at least it has been for about 4 or 5 hours, and I am way short on my steps today. So maybe you saw my video the other day and you're like, yeah, I'm not a morning person. I'm not getting up while it's still dark. I'm gonna get moving before the sun comes up, before a lot of people get up. That's fine. This video is to show you that you can still get it done even if you wait until later in the day. But you got to be disciplined. You know, maybe get off work, get out there and just get it done. So today I intentionally waited. I didn't get up early. I waited till after work to prove to you that you can still get 10,000 steps in after work, even if it's raining like it is today. So let's go. Let's get after it today. I'm gonna get my 10,000 steps, rain or shine, and I'm gonna take you with me today. So one of the things I was thinking about as I was preparing for this walk in the rain is, you know, a lot of people decide that they don't want to go outside when it's cold or raining or whatever. And really what I've learned over time is that a lot of it has to do with what kind of gear you got on. And, you know, luckily right now it's, you know, I got a little bit of break in the clouds or whatever. But one of the first things that I think about before I go outside is, you know, what kind of gear am I going to wear that day? And no matter what I'm doing outside, I always think about having a good base layer. And by good base layer, I don't necessarily mean, you know, you got to have something that's like super warm. Several years ago, I was out in Colorado and we were elk hunting, and I was dressed like I would be dressed back here in Iowa. I live in Iowa, and I went out there and we were getting ready to leave camp, and, you know, I get all bundled up and everything just like I would back here, go deer hunting and or any other, you know, outdoor activities. And I probably got like a quarter of a mile. Look at this awesome view right here. You know, one of the things about being outside, especially when it's raining like this, you know, not many other people are out here, and so I get to see all this stuff to myself, which is awesome. Anyway, I was going to elk hunt and leaving camp. You know, we were tent camping, and I got about a quarter of the mile away from camp, and I am just starting to drench with sweat. In fact, I can start to feel a little bit of sweat come on right now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually take my hat off for a little bit. But I started shedding layers like crazy. And what I learned that fall was probably the most beneficial thing I've learned in doing stuff outside, and that is about hypothermia and trying to get the moisture off your skin so that you stay dry. Because as soon as you get wet, you're going to start getting cold. As soon as you're active and you stop moving and you're wet, you're going to get cold. And so later years, I made sure that I had good moisture wicking clothing as my base layer. In fact, when I'm gonna be active, I typically will wear probably at least one, if not two layers less while I'm active than I do if I'm just gonna go out and sit, or if I'm gonna be less active outside in the cold. And that's just kind of a general rule of thumb I have. But you know, right now all I've got is a real good, you know, Patagonia. They're not sponsoring this video or anything. I really love these moisture wicking shirts. I think it's a medium weight shirt, and I wear those for hiking, I wear them for hunting, I wear them for fishing, I wear them for running, I wear them for shoveling snow. I wear them pretty much all the time as my base layer, because it's pretty certain for me that I'm gonna get out there and be able to wick away that moisture. Hey, I got another person out here.
Is that right?
Yeah, not many people out here today.
Not at all.
That's good. We get to enjoy it. So, just to my point there, not many people out here today, except a nice gentleman and walking his dog there. So, awesome stuff. I bet that dog's enjoying being out here too, because it's been kind of cold lately. But anyway, I always wear a really good layer that is going to wick away moisture from my skin. And that even goes, you know, down to my lower, you know, my bottom layers too. I want to make sure that I'm wicking away moisture. But what are some other things, like, you know, a day like today, you know, what are you going to do to make this, you know, walk, you know, hike, whatever you're doing, a little bit more enjoyable when it's raining like this? You know, because I'm committed to get my steps in. One thing I like to do is sometimes take routes that have a little bit more canopy. This right here, this tree, it's kind of thin in here, but there's a little bit more canopy, you know, so you're gonna have a little bit more, you know, cover as you're walking, so you might not get rained on as much. But you know, on a day like today when it's raining, I make sure that my outer layer is something that's waterproof. And so I've got, you know, waterproof pants, jacket on, my shoes. Super important with your shoes. You know, I can't stress enough too, like when you're hiking and doing any activity really, to help prevent hypothermia and just major discomfort, you want to make sure that you have really good moisture wicking socks on, stuff that's going to pull moisture away from your skin so that you don't get too cold. A great example of this, I was hiking a 14er last summer out in Colorado, actually 2 summers ago, and my buddy and I hiked into the basin, and we were camping there and then gonna finish the rest of the hike the second day. And we got to camp and set up and went to, you know, in our tents to sleep, and my feet were just freezing. And then I remembered that I brought a second pair of socks, and I took off the socks that I had on and switched socks, and within minutes my feet were feeling warmer, they were dry, and that was the key aspect of that, is they were just dry. And so I was able to get to sleep and enjoy my evening totally fine. But shoes are, you know, another thing, and it's real debatable. I'll probably do a video sometime about it. You know, I debated quite a bit when I was hiking out there in Colorado. Do I get, you know, footwear that was more like Gore-Tex and waterproof, or do I want something that's a little bit more breathable? And there's trade-offs to that. You know, and like I said, I'll probably do a video on that another time. But footwear is extremely important too. Socks, making sure you're keeping your feet dry. You know, right now I don't have my hands covered, but again, that's also because I know that you know, as I'm out here moving, my blood's gonna keep my hands pretty warm. And if I need to, I've got some cover. Oh yeah, here's another reason people don't like going through muddy trails very much. Oh yeah, we're soggy here. Real soggy here. A little bit of rock. But you know, sometimes this scares people. You know, scares them away from hitting their goals. And you know, I really believe that, you know, we've got to have a tough mentality. We've got to be tough between the ears if we want to succeed. Even on days like this, we got to get to our 10,000 steps. We've been behind. We got to get moving. So a little bit more cover here. That's not too bad. There's a couple other places on this trail that, you know, provide some pretty good cover. But it's a little bit windier than I was expecting. A lot windier than what it was earlier. So hopefully you guys can hear me okay. But I'm gonna check in here real quick and see. I've gone about 15 minutes, 0.66, 0.67 of a mile, based on my steps and what I was thinking I needed to complete my steps today. I'm probably gonna have to go about 2.5, 3 miles. So we'll see where I'm at about 1.5 miles in. You know, sometimes here you just get to stop and look at some of the neat aspects of nature and state parks. We got a lot of really cool state parks around here. You just get to see some of the history, kind of watch how over time, you know, things, you know, change. Not always for the better, but you know, it's just to watch, see how people are taking care of the land, taking care of everything. It's important. You know, I had the last couple days I was out of state, and I was staying at my parents' house, and you know, they don't have any workout equipment or anything. They live in town, and I'm not real familiar with the trails and stuff around where they live. But see here, here's a good tip. I'm starting to tell that I'm getting a little bit warm, and so I'm just gonna vent my jacket. That way, you know, I don't overheat, because I know that, you know, by the time I get done, I'm gonna be sweaty, but I want to be comfortable, and I don't, like I said, I don't want to get cold. Boy, look at all the water around here. You know, all the snow and ice are melting, but it's got like nowhere to go. The ground is still, you know, ground is still really hard, and that's one thing I don't like about when winter's over, is everything's all mushy and stuff when you need to go somewhere. I don't mind being mushy out on the trail, you know, getting dirty. I've camped out side of a mountain for, you know, 7-8 days in a row. I wasn't afraid to get dirty, no shower or anything like that. But you know, when you're going to work, going to the grocery store or whatever, like, it just, you know, you step in all that slush and it's like no good, you know. It's just, it's not fun. But you know, one of the other things I like to do, and I've already seen, I don't know if you can see them, but there's several deer moving away in the distance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know if you can see those very well, but they saw me coming. They're gonna keep moving. Deer this time of year especially when it gets really cold, they herd up and they, you know, try to stay together. It's kind of different right now because, you know, everything's uncovered, but they're still trying to stay around food sources for the most part. So they stay together, stay close to food sources, stay close to safety, you know. But there's a lot of predators out there too this time of year. They're also looking for food, so they got, you know, the deer herd up and stay together. Let's see, another look right through there. Yep, they're just checking me out. Yep, and sure enough, just as I was talking about my socks and my, you know, my footwear and whether it was waterproof or not, I did not wear waterproof shoes today by choice, and I just stepped in some big muddy puddles there, and I could feel a little bit of water getting into my socks. So I'm gonna have to watch that, because when you got wet socks, it starts rubbing, that's when you start to form blisters, and that's no good either. No bueno on blisters. But as I was starting to say, like, you just, what's better than being out here getting fresh air? You know, I'm getting my steps in, which is really a secondary bonus. I hear the birds. You know, I've seen probably a dozen deer already. You just get to be out here. It's kind of good for the soul, really. Helps you clear your mind. And I didn't sleep very well last night. Probably fell asleep about 3 o'clock. I was back up, you know, early. But sometimes you just gotta grind it out, you know. We talk about tough people win. You gotta keep going. That's why, you know, this channel is about tough people win, because there's so many people that, you know, gosh dang it, there's a difference between motivation and discipline. Motivation is just such short-lived. It's like, okay, I'm gonna listen to my favorite song, get pumped up before a football game, or, you know, while I'm running, I'm gonna listen to some songs, you know, keep me going. But once those songs are over, like, you start to come down, and you're not necessarily as motivated as what you might have been before. And the difference between that and discipline is, discipline, you just do what's necessary no matter what. You do what you need to do to get the job done. And so today, did I want to come out here in the rain? Nope, not really. Did I want to be out here in the cold? Nope, not really. Did I want my feet to get all wet? Nope, not really. I didn't. But I'm out here anyway, because I'm training my mind to tell my body that, hey, you can do tough things. You know, I was telling somebody earlier today, I was talking to him, and he brought up his dad had passed a couple years ago, and we were talking about, you know, it's something that ooh, there's a nice buck over there. Still kind of small, but see if I can get a little bit closer and sneak up on him. Just hit a mile. Pretty slow mile. Let's see here. Not too bad. He's actually letting me get pretty close. There he goes. Don't worry, big boy. I wasn't gonna do anything to you. Anyway, I was talking to this guy, and he's talking about his dad passed away a couple years ago, and you know, we were talking about everybody has to go through that, and you know, it is part of life. Like, you know, nobody's getting out of here alive. That's kind of the price you pay, right? But what I think, what I told him was, I choose to do hard things so that when unchosen suffering like that happens, I can handle it more. Now, that doesn't mean I'm emotionless, no feelings, don't care. That's far from it. But if I am tough between the ears, I do feel like I can handle things better. And that's not just for, you know, unchosen suffering in life, but you know, maybe you've got some big presentation at work and you're kind of nervous about it. So this is a perfect example. Great in here, good canopy. You stay on the sides. Like, what an awesome place to be right now. But you just stay tough between the ears, so that way when those things happen in life that are unchosen, even though they're going to happen, you can handle them a little bit better. But I'll check back in here in just a little bit with you. We'll see where I'm at stepwise. I realized that I had to put the camera down so that I could use my hand that was holding the camera to check my steps on my Garmin watch. I'm a little bit over 5,600 steps, so I'm getting there. You know, I recently, past 6 months or so, maybe 7 now, I switched to a Garmin watch. I had been doing an Apple Watch, and for what I was doing kind of in the outdoors and stuff, I was just feeling like I wanted more of the, you know, outdoors type watch instead of, you know, the more of a computer on my wrist. But nonetheless, anyway, you know, one thing I think I share with you all that a lot of people know, but I'm also a type 1 diabetic, and so I've learned to have to be tough when things are real crappy. You know, when my blood sugar gets real low, that's been super challenging. And I ran a marathon in 2013, and that was real challenging because I had to, through a ton of trial and error, probably more error than anything, I learned that, you know, I had to keep my blood sugar from dropping too low, but I also had to keep it from getting too high. And so sometimes I have to treat. That's provided some extra challenges. It's real challenging when I was a multi-sport athlete in college. I always had to have, at that time, there wasn't a lot of like goos and gels and all this performance stuff that there is now. But back then I just had, like at football in college, I'd have about a gallon of orange juice and a couple Snickers bars on the sideline and I'd always have to eat before the game in the locker room, and my teammates were like, how in the world are you eating before the game? I'm like, yeah, I've got to, you know. I wasn't wearing a insulin pump like I am now, and so whatever insulin was in me, you know, it was in me, and so I had to counter that with, you know, eating and stuff, and so that made it real challenging. And it makes it real challenging, you know, doing just about anything. You know, even this walk, I have to always carry stuff with me, so that way, always planning, always thinking, you know, how do I plan for, you know, in case my blood sugar would get low. But what it's done is it's really made me think about being tough between the ears and gritty. You know, I could easily sit back and think, oh, woe is me, and why do I have this, and I gotta take insulin all the time, I wear a pump, I wear a continuous glucose monitor. You know, why is this happening to me? And instead, I turn it into fuel for doing tough things and being able to prove to myself that I can do them. You know, I never thought I'd run that marathon in 2013. There was no endurance sports in my past. I kind of got challenged, and so I said, yep, I'm doing it. In fact, I've trained for 3 marathons, only completed 1 because the other 2 got injured during training, which sucks. Sucks doing all that training and then you gotta stop after months of training because you got injured. But that's what happens, and I don't look at those as, you know, failures. It's just kind of, you know, attempts at getting that done. So I'm getting down here kind of to the lake. I'm gonna turn around here, but man, look at this. How awesome is that? I know it's frozen over. I was out on the lake the other day, and it's a little bit icy. And one of the coolest things is listening to the ice crackle and make like almost like moaning sounds. It's really weird, but there's still a lot of people I've seen around here still ice fishing. A lot of panfish, you know, pictures I've seen online and stuff, which is awesome. And I'm getting ready to maybe extend my lure making business. I've been kind of debating on whether to do that or not. I've had probably at least a half dozen people ask me lately if I could make them some lures. In some cases, couple cases, some very specific lures that I've never made, but I'm kind of willing to try. But hear all those geese? They're having a good time over there. I don't know if you can hear them. I don't know if the video is picking them up, but they're honking for sure. They're probably talking about dinner. What are we gonna do for dinner, guys? I don't know. We're gonna have to go somewhere and find it. Oh, boy. Surely you can hear those. There's a ton of them. I can't pan around because there's a lot of trees right here, but how cool is that? Listen to those geese. And before I close out this video, I just want to say that no matter what the conditions are, no matter how you're feeling, you can do something. You know, chronic disease and illness don't take a day off. And so I feel like I shouldn't either. And, you know, sometimes it's good to rest and recover. But right now, today, I'm getting my 10,000 steps in. And I'm happy about that. Boy, mushy, mushy, mushy. Love it. Love it. So cool. When all that's filled in, that spot right there on the trail is always one of my favorite spots. You know, when the trees are all filled in and stuff, it's really pretty cool. But I'm gonna leave you for today. I'm just about at my 10,000 steps. Get out there, get active, get tough between the ears, because in life, tough people win. Make sure you subscribe. It really is going to help the channel grow and get the message out there. Make sure you like, give it a thumbs up, and please post a comment. It helps with the algorithm. I know it sounds silly asking for that stuff, but it really does help get the word out there, because I want to help other people, not only just motivate them, but I want to help them to be more disciplined in their life so that they too can win. We'll see y'all later on the next one here at Outdoor Moxie.